Yeah, hi, Peter Teese from Yamina Rare Plants here. Doing some grafting today of witch hazels or Hamamelis. I've got a whole lot of varieties that we imported many years ago. My father started importing them probably even around the time or before I started working in the Yamina Rare Plants in Monbulk in the Dandenong Ranges here. Witch hazels is their common name, and basically from Southeast Asia up into Japan, China, Korea, that part of the world. Most of the hybrids that are commercially available in Australia are cross intermedia, which is Japonica cross mollis cultivars or hybrids. These are the rootstocks. These are Hamamelis virginiana, which is obviously an American species, and it's used as a rootstock. You'll often see virginiana used in medicinal herbal type applications, alternative medicines, and also alternative balms and tonics and all sorts of things. So you get a little bit of interest for people wanting to buy that for these alternative uses, but obviously most of the time witch hazels are beautiful for their perfumed yellow, orange or red flowers, sort of spidery flowers. And the one I'm doing at the moment is sunburst, and there's a couple of little flowers on the wood that I'm grafting. The wood that I graft is called a scion, S-C-I-O-N. Beautiful perfume on the witch hazels. This one's a lovely yellowy gold colour. Some of them are sort of really a burnt orangey gold colour. Some rich reds and like Diane and Ruby Glow. Then you've got Jelena, which is an orange cultivar. So there's a whole range of witch hazels. You need, when you're grafting, really good scion wood off cutback plants. So I've got some beautiful wood here to graft, and usually I have anything between 3 and 5 buds per graft. You can see some I've already done here in the last 15-20 minutes. And these are obviously the growth buds, and obviously the flower buds are a little fatter on the stems before they come out. But most of the witch hazels are out flowering now in the Dandenong Ranges, and probably depending on how far north, south, east, west you are, could vary by a couple of weeks or more when they actually are in bloom. The other thing about witch hazels is they have good autumn colour, most of them, not all of them, but most of them do. There's autumn fire and Sandra, which are named for good autumn colour, but actually a lot of the ornamental perfume and good flowering cultivars like Pallida and Sunburst have got a good autumn colour as well as blooms and perfume. So there's a whole lot of uses for witch hazel. You've got the autumn colour, you've got the late winter flowering, and of course you've got the species Virginiana from America, which obviously has some more alternative applications. Witch hazels in the Hamamelis family, and they do require reasonable rainfall or irrigation through the spring and summer months. So if you're in a very dry spot, as long as the temperatures aren't too extreme, you'll grow them okay. But you do have to be aware that they need equitable water through from mid-spring through to the end of summer. You don't, like last autumn and summer in southern Australia was drought-like, so anyone in Melbourne and Adelaide, Hobart would know that like these things have to be attended to, otherwise you're going to lose things like witch hazel. So you do have to be aware and keep them well irrigated if you're having some southern Australian summers. Otherwise they're relatively easy to grow. You put them in a south-facing, east-facing aspect away from hot winds. Don't put them in a hot, dry, north-facing aspect if you're down in Melbourne or any of the other capitals I just mentioned, or country areas. Don't put them in a truly arid area. They won't like that. They are from a reasonably high rainfall region in Asia, all these cultivars. And I'm going to do a grafting. I'll show you how to graft these. I usually put pieces anywhere up to 6 or 8 inches. Doesn't have to be exactly that, but something in that vicinity. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 buds. I try to keep it as simple as possible. Just do a little diagonal cut at the base of the graft. Now, the whole point of grafting is to match the cambium. So it's like when you cut yourself and you get a scab on your hand. The callousing of a plant's much the same thing. So when I just go literally bark deep, and that exposes the cambium across the scion that this is called. I get a rootstock, and I always make sure that I've keep the rootstock to just a single stem. Make sure that you've got a matching straight piece of understock, the piece that you graft, the rootstock that you're grafting onto. That's a rootstock. So basically you can see the cambium is exposed on both sides. So therefore, when you slot this little guy in, it's got a little lip there at the bottom. So that just pushes in. I'll do this all in slow motion for you. Take that little weed out. And of course, whenever you film anything, of course you're running out of tape. So just bear with me as I grab another tape. Murphy's Law, of course. So usually I do a piece about this long. So what's that, about 10 inches or something like that? When you're grafting, people overthink it, but basically you want that taut like that at the base that holds the scion to the rootstock, and just put your fingers at the base and put the lip of that bottom bit of tape upwards, so that'll hold it in place. And you're just keeping a little bit of tension, not overdoing it, just all the way through. And it's really as simple as that. And when you get to the end, hold the tape out and then pull that through in the gap and then pull it tight. And you will find you're all fingers if you ever try this at home, and obviously using a knife, if you're not used to using a knife, it can be a little bit awkward. I'll do another one just to give you the example again. There's a rootstock that I hadn't prepared on purpose so that I can sort of show you. I like to have a single piece of wood for the graft. Same thing again, just light. The amount of, you don't use, this isn't a muscle game, this is a very light, same as when we graft a Japanese maple, we do this little, what's called a side veneer graft. We just literally go bark deep. Same thing again, 8 or 10 inches long, the bit of tape. We get another piece of wood, and we're trying to, when you're used to doing this by the thousand, you kind of get used to, you're not really stopping and thinking, you're just doing automated. Now this is a bit fatter piece. I probably don't really need it that long. That's still going to be 7 or 8 inches long. That's enough. So there is a little bit of give and take and variation. Same thing again. You've got, if you go shallow, just bark deep on both the scion and the stock. I've gone a little bit deeper on the stock in this case, a bit shallower on the scion, but it doesn't matter as long as you've got cambium touching cambium across both sides, or in some cases the whole width and breadth. The better, the more you've got cambium touching cambium on the scion and the stock, the better it'll take. Same thing again, keep the pressure up, going around, and if you need to, you just push the wood slightly so it matches up, pull it out, tie it like this. Okay, now what you do find is you've got to keep the moisture out of the graft union, so there is a little bit of a gap down there where water can get in. If you can keep that, I usually use a bit of water-based paint, white paint, and I just dab it both sides, and I'll be doing that in the next couple of days before they get put away. And that will reduce the chance of it rotting before it actually calluses. So this callusing is going to occur over the next few weeks into early spring. The sap on these is starting to run, which is what you want on an understock. The sap should always be running, and the scion that you're using should be more or less dormant. The more dormant, the better usually, and it will wake up literally in reaction to the sap flowing on the understock. So timing is of the essence. You can graft a lot of deciduous plants like witch hazels, maples, magnolias, and other deciduous plants in either the winter, late winter, early spring. Especially if you've saved the wood, the scions, put them in the fridge. You can graft a little bit later into the season, and it'll extend your grafting opportunity. But if you do it at the exact right time, like I'm doing at the moment, I grafted these in early August last year, and they worked really well, so I'm doing the same thing again. The first couple of weeks of August, they'll be fine. If I leave it too long, the sap is running too hard, and it will flood the union and they'll rot off instead of callousing. So timing is everything with grafting and budding. I'm only doing grafting here. Some people, John Van Engen, who used to work for me, used to do 6,000 or 8,000 buds a day, and that's a much faster process. If I'm grafting and I'm doing big numbers like I used to in the old days, I don't so much anymore, could do 400, 450 grafts in a day if we're all organised and you had people supplying you the rootstocks and the signs and everything in a commercial way. Obviously, if you're doing buds, you can do, like John did, 6,000 or 8,000 buds with some genera, some families of plants, but he would have often 4 or 5 people tying the plastic tie behind him with the buds so that it maximised the number of buds he could push in a day. And a bud was obviously just a single bud, whereas when you're grafting, it's a much slower, clunkier process because you've got a big chunk that you've got to join on. It's a much slower process. Both are relevant in the nursery industry. When you're doing smaller numbers, sometimes graft's good because you get a small multi-branch tree smaller. If you do a budded tree, you tend to get a big long whip in the first year. If you're growing budding, this is usually done in the ground, get a big strong, in 1 year you can sometimes get a 3 feet or metre sort of size tree in 12 months. And even bigger with some species, depending on the size of the rootstock, because the rootstock will dictate how much growth you'll get out of a plant in one season. So, witch hazels, really lovely, cool climate type plant. Don't put them in hot, extreme or dry conditions. But Melbourne, yeah, no worries. Up into Sydney, of course, the Blue Mountains, of course, a really good place for them to grow. If you a lot of the cooler places and the slightly more altitude places in southern Australia, terrific place to go. Where you're getting near the coast, where it's warmer and further north, it becomes more compromised. Sydney's sort of, I've got friends that are growing them in Sydney, but you just do have to have the right drainage and so forth, because obviously in Sydney the summers are quite humid, and sometimes that interferes with how well they grow. But further south, usually okay as long as you've got too far inland and too arid. They don't like that. But witch hazels are beautiful plants. The perfume is spectacular, and I hope you enjoy this little grafting demo and a little bit about, if you look up my Facebook or Instagram blogs, and even my, I'm starting to do more and more of these YouTube channel blogs, I'll talk about the individual varieties as well. So there's a whole range of them, but just keep in mind that they're suitable for your conditions, because every little microclimate is different with growing a plant. So all the best out there. Cheers.